Hi, I'm Megan.
I'm Colin, and this is Pet Sitter Confessional,
an open and honest discussion about life as a pet sitter.
Brought to you by Time to Pet and Pet Sitters International. We are really excited today to have Paul and Sandra from Minimalist Journeys, where they talk about their passion for minimalist living and mindful and sustainable travel and equipping people to have more experiences by living with less. And today they're going to share some of their experiences from travel, house sitting, and dealing with pets along the way, and give us some mindset tools as well. So, Paul and Sandra, thank you so much for joining us today. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thanks, Colin, for having us. So we are Paul and Sandra, as you introduced us already. Paul is Kiwi, he's from New Zealand. I'm from Germany, and we both met in Australia, in Sydney, where we both worked for probably about 10 years or so. We have left, or we had corporate careers in Sydney until 2016. Paul worked in IT. I worked for a financial institution, long hours, and at some point we decided to give up on those corporate careers and follow our heart. And that was in 2016. And yeah, we've been nomadic or location independent since then, and started house sitting officially probably 2017 or so, a year later after we left our corporate careers.
Sounds like quite the transition from corporate careers to nomadic house sitting and traveling and having no home base. What was that transition like for you, and what really spurred that on?
Well, in 2012, we took a sabbatical from our employment, and we spent 3 months traveling overseas. We got back from that trip and realized there's more to life than actually work and corporate life and working for somebody else. So over the next few years, we dedicated our time and resources to saving as much as we possibly could, to the point where in 2016, we were both able to give up our jobs, quit our jobs, sell our house, sell our possessions, and actually move to the life that we actually want to live.
Yeah, it didn't happen overnight. I mean, the 2012 trip kind of was a starting point. In 2014, Paul and I got married, and we wrote a commitment statement in terms of how our life, how we wanted our life to live, our future life together. And that was, I guess, the starting point for our minimalist journey. And from that point onwards, 2014 to 2016, so it's like a period of 2 years where we reduced a 4-bedroom house down to carry-on backpacks. So, every weekend, slowly reducing our possessions, garage sales, giving away to friends, going to op shops, thrift stores to give stuff away, et cetera, et cetera.
So it's not something that just you woke up one day and the next day you were in a backpack, right? It was this very intentional process of working into.
Exactly.
Was that because you had to become comfortable with just the backpack lifestyle, or was it just so much that you had to pare down that you had to slowly work to it?
No, in fact, it was the opposite. The fact that when we went away on our big 3-month trip in 2012, we actually had very large backpacks. We had 70-litre backpacks. We had everything we thought we needed for the just in case. In the Amazon, I took my tripod just in case there was a tiger sitting there and I wanted to take a photo of the tiger and the tiger would stand still.
Yeah, I know Amazon. Tigers in the Amazon.
And there wasn't even a tiger in the Amazon. So how bad was that? I didn't even know. So it was a point where it was things that we didn't want as opposed to things that we needed to have. So we pared down the things that held us back, things like the house and the big backpack for travel and the need to go to exotic places that everybody else goes to. So our intention was and is to do things that society doesn't expect of us, which is including, going down to just having a backpack full of our possessions, and that's all.
Yeah, or at least questioning kind of the societal norm for us. That the trip in 2012 kind of opened our eyes. We returned to our corporate life and realizing, these are first world problems that we're trying to solve that are not real problems, nothing, really important. And then on the other hand, spending, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day in a role where we found or realized, or I at least realized, that they didn't align with our values.
So you had that transformational trip where you were away for 3 months hunting, or not hunting, but tracking down tigers that didn't exist in the Amazon. And you come back and you decide that you want to be nomadic. And I know when people hear nomadic, and especially in the house sitting world, there are a couple different ways that people can go about house sitting. There's the for pay version, and then there's the value-based house sitting. So which one of those options do you guys ascribe to, and why?
So for us, it's the values-based side. We don't get paid for our house sitting services. And we prefer it that way for various reasons. Number one, there are always legal and tax implications. And in our case, if we do house sit overseas, also immigration things that we need to consider. So we don't want to get into trouble and being, risking that we are being expelled from the country we're in. That's just not worth it. And the other point as well is we actually enjoy being around animals and spending time with them. We because we have such a nomadic lifestyle, we can't really have animals. It would complicate things way more. And so that's for us kind of our animal fix, having the house sits. And plus also, for example, we've been doing more farm sits lately, and we found they hugely appreciate the farmers, working hard the whole year and then having 2 weeks off. They're so appreciative of us, giving them the respite and the assurance that they can go away and their animals are looked after. So it's for us a bit of kind of that part of giving back as well. And plus also, we found that about a third of our costs, of our expenses, are accommodation costs. So just by doing the house, we already have a benefit. So that's a win-win for both the homeowners or pet owners, and for us. We save on accommodation costs as well.
Most of our listeners run businesses where they may do house sits where owners will pay for their services to come and sit there. They're not usually for long-term stays like you do. So someone's listening to this and they're going, how do you make money from this to still travel and to do all of these things? I know you mentioned that you had worked some time to save and build up to that, but you've been doing this for several years now. What does that look like for you if you're not being paid to sit these houses?
Well, I guess the good thing about our lifestyle is that it doesn't cost a lot. And so therefore, we don't have to earn a lot of money to be able to pay for that lifestyle. In fact, we've worked it out over the last few years that we've been nomadic. And no matter which continent we're in, whether it be Europe in 2019 or New Zealand or in the Americas before that, our annual budget is around $55,000 in Australian. So that's about $42,000 US for the two of us to live the life that we live, which covers things like accommodation and leisure and transport, etc.
Covers everything apart from our business expenses.
So we know what it costs to live the life, and so therefore we just need to work out how do we make that amount of money to be able to cover it. So what happened before we finished our corporate roles and leading up to that, we knew that we were going to be nomadic. So therefore, we worked on saving, developing a strategic plan for our investments. We sold our house in Sydney, which at the time was a great capital gain for us and a windfall in terms of the house prices in the market. So those things have all helped us in terms of having passive investments to be able to cover a lot of the expenses during the year.
Yeah. We also had up until recently, before COVID hit, we sold an investment property recently in a short-term rental, which we couldn't or didn't want to sustain because we didn't know how long COVID would impact visitor arrivals here in New Zealand, and a large part for the international visitors. So it was a place in Queenstown, which is kind of the adventure capital of New Zealand. We sold that, but up until we did that, we obviously had some income from those visitor arrivals as well, and guests that stayed with us. What else? Every now and then, there's also the opportunity for us to earn some extra money for the odd jobs here and there.
And our website, and obviously through our website, which is where we promote minimalism and promote values-based living. We have courses on there that we promote. and we have affiliate marketing, and obviously we're asked to review certain services and products. And it's a little bit difficult for us because obviously the niche that we're in, we're not into promoting products that we don't need. So there's a bit of a catch-22 here.
Yeah, we are only talking about or reviewing products that we actually use and that we would be happy to recommend, to friends and family. So that obviously limits it, and therefore our website doesn't earn as much as we'd like to. But that's okay with us, we don't. We're fortunately not in a position where we have to do everything and kind of sell our soul, because that's what we would not want to do.
I think that gets back to your why for doing this. You wanted to live the life that you wanted to. And so this is kind of integrated in everything that you're doing, even when it comes to how you earn your money and where you travel and how this works, is that, okay, we need to stay true to ourselves whenever we are putting these pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah, that's an intrinsic component to the way we live our life. And if we don't live our life truly, then how can we talk to other people about that?
Yeah.
So this is a core component to our value system that we have. And it's nothing more or less than what other people have. We're just really strong in terms of our conviction to what is important to us.
Yeah, you mentioned the term value-based living. How does that manifest in our lives and how we operate? And I guess backing way up, like, how do we even find our values to start from and living according to them?
Yeah, and it's interesting. We've done some analysis in the last little while about the term values, because I think in America you see values as being maybe a term that's used more at the family level or a conservative level or a religious level in terms of when you start to talk about values. So maybe if we talk about intentionality, living with intention, living or having intentional intentions themselves, that's what we're talking about. Like, what is true to you? What is important to you? What will you not compromise on? And so it's a matter of, what are your whys? How do you live your life? And it's not so much working out what you want to be. It's or what is important to you in the future. It's, what are you doing right now? Because when you look at what you're doing right now, you can see what your values are. It may be something like honesty. It may be something like integrity or fun, or you might like going partying. And so therefore going out there and partying as a 20-year-old may be really important to you. And that's part of your value system. That's important, and you don't want to give that up.
And values change also through our lifetime. Paul just mentioned, in your 20s, you like fun, and that's all fine. I guess what's important is that people look back at different stages of their lives, that if what's important to them or what they thought was important to them, 10 years ago is still important to them now, 10 years on. A good exercise to do is actually to think about, write down words. What feels important to you? Is it family? Is it your health? Write it down, but also equally think about kind of when you are in certain situations, what causes your tummy to kind of knot up, and what are you not happy with? What is a situation you don't want to have in your life too often? So kind of you figure out what is important, or on the flip side, what you don't want to have in your life this way. So it needs a bit of self-work. And one of our free course that we put on our website is exactly a values exercise, how you can determine what's important to you. As I said, it requires a bit of work, but it's so important to do that exercise, or to do that self-work, because we only have one life. We shouldn't be living someone else's life just because, that is what everyone else does, buy a house, have a job, have children, etc. That might not actually suit you. It's important for you to work out what's important in your life and how you want to live your life.
Have you heard of Time to Pet? Claire from Acton Critter Sitters has this to say.
Time to Pet has honestly revolutionized how we do business. My sitters can work much more independently because they have ongoing access to customer and pet information without relying on me. I save hours upon hours of administrative time on billing, processing payments, and generating paychecks.
If you are looking for new pet sitting software, give Time to Pet a try. Listeners of our show can get 50% off your first 3 months by visiting timetopet.com/confessional. When we're running our businesses, we have to struggle with how we structure our businesses, how we set our time up during the day of, am I going to be operating from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.? Am I going to take breaks? Am I going to take weekends off? Am I going to have time for my family? So these things that you're talking about of going, okay, what do you want? What do you want in life? What do you want? And then every time you have to make a decision, does that get you closer to those, or does it take you further away? And when you have that aligned, like it sounds, like when you guys put your why together, it led you down the path of nomadic house sitting and traveling full time. Other people may do that, and it may align with something completely different. And I think what's beautiful about that is that's totally fine. It's just that's on us. That's our work that we have to do, and aligning not just our personal lives, but our business and everything that entails.
A lot of that comes down to what you know and what you don't know. And so you don't know what you don't know. You know things that you know. So it's really important that as individuals, we come through our life with different histories, we interact, etc. So there's no judgment. What other people do at one point in time is important right then. And in 5 years' time and 10 years' time, they may change. I'm sure that 20 years ago, Sandra and I would not have got together as a couple because we'd have been very different back then. And as we change over time, it's quite important. So when it comes to things like work, and small business working particularly, what's important right now is it may be the fact that you want to get your name out there, or you want to make sure your reputation, you've got a 5-star reputation, or you want to get as many clients as you possibly can. So it's all priorities of what's important, but as long as it's aligned to that values system that you've got in place already. So actions follow values. Values follows the why. So without the why, it's very difficult to actually achieve an end result.
Your website is titled Minimalist Journeys, and I love that because I think it means a lot of things for different people. So what does that mean for you, and why did you decide to name it that?
I answered that because I came up with a name. I think there are different reasons why Minimalist Journeys. Firstly, we, as with that 2012 trip, we like to explore the world, learning about different cultures, improving our language skills, trying different cuisines, all that sort of thing. So the traveling is a huge part of our life now, and to some extent was also in the past. So that's kind of the journeys is kind of coming out of the result of us minimizing our life. So that's kind of the Minimalist Journeys. If you're looking at our logo on our website, the journeys is the bold part, and the minimalist is the normal regular font part, because we're reducing to achieve more. Our logo is also experience more by living with less, or our catchline. So that's that part. The other part is journeys of people to and with minimalism are always different. So everyone has a very unique journey, and we also write about it on our website a bit, what people, got started on their minimalist journey. And it's an ongoing process. It's not kind of something that, you declutter your home and that's it. It takes different turns as you discover, your home is cleaner. Suddenly I've got more time to do other things, etc. So that part we also wanted to reflect in our name, that it is a journey, that it is an ongoing process, that it is different for everyone.
Well, and you touched on it there, because I think when many people hear the term minimalist or minimalism, they think, I need to do some decluttering, or I have 100 books and I'm going to get rid of 90 of them, and now I have 10 books. But it's more than just getting rid of stuff, right? So why is the process of reducing the stuff so important?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And that's certainly the case we've found in America, in most Western societies, that decluttering is the first component of minimalism that people think about. And it is a pretty important one, because decluttering, whether it be in a home environment or a digital environment or at work or your friends, how many Facebook friends you've got, etc. All those things you need to consider decluttering. And it's to remove the clutter, the things. So therefore, you've got time for the more important things in life. So without actually removing those things, you won't have time or headspace to be able to think about what's actually important. So having 100 books in your house may actually be really important. And it's the sort of thing that we say to people, don't get rid of those books if they actually provide value to you. If they are important to you, if they're part of your thinking that having a book in the house and having a physical book in the house is important, because we don't want to see people remove things that give them happiness and give them contentment. So it's important that they actually understand the why they want to remove things or be a minimalist before they even start the journey. What are you trying to achieve out of it?
Yeah, it's certainly not about living with a certain amount of things or depriving yourself and having a home that kind of has nothing in it. If your home and having a comfortable home is important to you, have memorabilia, have things on the wall. It's not about an amount of things. It's about what is important to you and aligning your life with that perspective.
Yeah.
It is actually interesting. It's one of the things that we talk to homeowners about when we're doing the interview and talking to them when we're going to be looking after their pets. It's the question of if there was a fire in their house or if there was an emergency in their house, what are the things that you want us to grab out of your house before we leave the house? And
From the pet.
obviously, the number one thing is my pet poodle or my little fluffy cat, and then they go, my photos or my documents, etc. But in fact, with proper insurance, as long as you've got people and the animals out of the house can burn down. It shouldn't really matter what's actually in the house, because you for us, again, it's a lesson we try to help people with and encourage is. You should be able to not come back to your house. You should have your things digitized. You should have your photos in the cloud. There shouldn't be that many physical things in your house that are that important that we've got to go back in there and rescue in a fire.
Yeah, I mean, should sounds a bit harsh, but it's something to consider. And that asking yourself those questions, in terms of what's important to me. If you really bring it down, is your loved ones, your animals. And maybe a few things that really are irreplaceable in terms of, physical things, but that's it. A lot of your big couch and your big car and whatnot is not actually, turns out, that important.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm sitting here looking over here, and I've got a couple typewriters. That were like my grandma's and my great grandpa's and like things like that. Where I'm going, you know what?
Exactly.
Like those do bring me joy. I like having those around the house. Would they be the first things I save in the fire? Probably not. But we all have those things in life where we don't even have to think about it. We just know. If you have a pet and someone calls you and say your pet just got hit by a car, you don't have to pull out your list and go, well, let's see, where is that priority today? And I'm pretty booked, and I don't know. Like, you don't have to go through that process. You just know that, right? And that's where, when we're talking about minimalists here, we're talking minimizing. It's not minimalizing everything. It's minimalizing the things that prevent us from gaining access to our why and living in more alignment with that, so that we are not distracted by that. And I love, Paul, how you had said even headspace too, of the things in life that clutter our mind and keep us distracted, and even reducing those so that we can be living in the moment or with the people that we want to be.
How many people work really, really long hours and don't get to, enjoy what actually is important to them? And was the case for me. But then you also don't have the opportunity, if you work those long hours and are always exhausted, to actually think about how you want to live your life. So start with removing the stuff that's actually not important.
Many of us are not in the stage of life, or we're not ready to, or we're not able to be fully nomadic, minimalist, living out of backpacks. So what are some ways that we can start experiencing more with less right now?
The first thing is to look at the circumstances that you're in right now. Being present is probably the most important advice we can give you. Being mindful of your surroundings and the people in your life. So no matter whether you've got small kids or many dogs or huge amount of possessions, it's actually stopping and not worrying about what happened before, what happened in the future. It's the right here and now, and taking that time on a daily basis to just being present. the breathing, the thinking about your life right now, appreciating what you have right now at the end of the day. Those are the things to start off, because then you can start moving forward from there. So they're the very, very tiny things at a habit level that you start off doing.
Another thing that, in any situation you could apply is, and particularly with COVID now and people being restricted in their movements, is to think about, okay, well, how could I, for example, have a nice day out when it's sunny with my family and do something we all enjoy, but that doesn't cost very much. You'd be surprised how much opportunity there is in your neighborhood or in an hour's car drive away to do something that either costs nothing or costs very little, maybe an entrance fee to a national park. But it doesn't have to be always, when we're talking about travel, for example, the visit to Disneyland or a big cruise ship tour or big overseas trip. Start small and realize actually can really enjoy yourself, even with the small things. To Paul's point, in terms of the actual presence, there's so much beauty around us. Just by enjoying it and stopping it and smelling the roses, you actually realize how much there is, and also over time realize that at home cleaning the kitchen or keeping the big house clean and with all the stuff that's around, that distracts from that. Maybe I don't want to spend my weekend doing that, but rather be out in nature and kind of get the ball rolling like that way.
Very reminiscent of busy days, long hours. As pet sitters and dog walkers, we put in sometimes 12, 14 hours a day, back to back visits. Especially right now, things are booming. Tons of people are traveling, and we're just busy, right? And that busyness can start making us feel a little bit claustrophobic, not just because we are now in a box where I can't do the things that I want to be doing because I'm very time constrained now. But also mentally, I don't have that time. And Sandra, you said that I don't have the time to think about these things. I don't have time to address my why. And so what I hear both of you saying is to start with just very simple things, to start being intentional about it, to be intentional with my time and my actions, and start little, start really small with, how am I planning my breakfast? How am I planning my breaks? How am I planning my phone usage? How am I planning my purchases? These little habits that will build up, like it's a muscle that we have to learn to start working.
Yeah, and also with that, once you've actually got that habit in place for yourself, is making sure you celebrate it. If the fact that you're able to say meditate, 7 days in a row, or even just that one day, appreciate yourself. So it's almost a double whammy. You're actually achieving something, but then you're also going, I've actually done something for myself. And that's the really nice thing. It's actually a two-pronged attack. And that helps you keep that habit going longer and longer, because you're actually achieving the double whammy.
Yeah, I mean, we do that same thing when we focus on weight loss or becoming stronger or running marathons, or when we focus on our physical body. We do that all the time, right? We'll post the pictures on Facebook, or we'll share them with friends and family and look at how much weight I've lost. But you're right. How rarely do we actually sit there and go, you know what? I was able to meditate, or I was able to pray for 15 minutes today. That for some reason, that kind of achievement really isn't as held in as high as esteem as other things in our world.
Yeah. And this is a particularly important one, and it's part of the philosophy of how to build up the habits that you want to have, is to be able to, for yourself, celebrate to yourself. Could be a high five to yourself, or a cheer, or a eyebrow raise, once you've done it, or whatever it is. But celebrating internally is more important than your social media posts of "I've done it."
Yeah.
So if you need to actually appreciate what you do before other people appreciate what you do.
Yeah. What always helps is, for example, before you go to bed, say, look at back at the day, and there may have been experiences where you thought that didn't work as planned. But then, if you really think about it, there would have been also occasions where good things happened on that day, and rather than leaving on a note when going to bed where just focusing on the negative, focus on the positive and say thanks for those, and then go to bed and hopefully sleep then without having those negative thoughts in your mind.
In fact, we do a little of that when we've got the animals and looking after the animals. It's probably the day after we've finished with a pet sit, where it's like, wow, it's just an appreciation of what we've just had. It might be a 2-week thing or a week sit, but it's just that whole thing of like what was important with that dog or that cat or what do we like about it is just reinforcing the message to ourselves. But it's also then part of the review process and all the rest of it that we're doing. But it's just that whole thing of like, wow, that was so cool. And what do we like about them? There's something to like about everything. You just got to find it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that of where does our validation come from as individuals? And, if we're running a business, many times we may feel like we're not legitimate, right? We're not good enough. We're constantly failing. But taking these few minutes of mindfulness practices and reflecting back on things that we did accomplish, or maybe it's just the growth that we've had over the past 5 years of doing this and going, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine that people, let me within 1.5 miles of their pet 10 years ago when I started or whatever that, right? Like it's, you can take those time to appreciate that growth, because I love how you said that of before we can start sharing it to others and seeking their validation, we have to make sure that we prize our validation above and beyond, because what if you didn't share it with somebody? Is it any more Is it any more legitimate whether you share it or not? Like, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's there to hear it, does it still fall? And same thing with our personal accomplishments. I absolutely love that. Now, you are both currently in New Zealand house sitting. So I would love for you to tell us about the house sitting community in New Zealand and what that's like.
Pre-COVID, certainly it was quite busy with the Kiwis that go away on holiday. They normally go away for 2 to 3 to 4 weeks at a time overseas because they want to be able to visit other cultures in other countries. So we found that the length of time for the sits was a lot longer. During COVID and during lockdowns, obviously there was no work at all. There were no house sits, and everybody pretty much stayed at home.
Needed to.
As in place.
Yeah.
But certainly in the last 6 months or so, when it's opened up, we've found we've still got restrictions in place in New Zealand at the moment, where it was difficult to go overseas and come back without having to do the 14-day quarantine. So the Kiwis would go away and explore their own country. And it's not a very big country, but they've certainly explored their own country. So the house sits were certainly shorter and more of them, obviously concentrating around key public holiday periods, school holidays, etc. There'd be a lot of demand for house sitters, and during the other time, less so.
Yeah, between 5 and 7 days, or maybe up 5 to 10 days, is kind of the norm currently. It's getting a little bit longer since the border with Australia has been opened. But yeah, that's kind of what we find. The good thing is house sitting is very prevalent in New Zealand, which it isn't in some other countries. So there are heaps of opportunities once kind of the world returns to a degree of normality. But for example, as a house sitter, you have to be fairly quick to apply for house sits, because there is a lot of competition. Once there are lots of overseas travelers in the country again, the competition will increase again for house sits. What else? And it's not common here to pay either. So if someone came here with the intent to earn money from the house sitting, New Zealand wouldn't be a country to attempt that. That
said, there are professional pet sitters in New Zealand. It's a smaller market, a much smaller market, and you'll find that they're not so much pet sitting, but they might be more dog walkers type of thing. So you normally find the dog walking service is here, absolutely, in the bigger towns or bigger cities. But in terms of overall pet sitting during the day, you'll probably find that there's more of the kennels or the professional ones who've actually got the places where you take your animal for the day and then come back and pick it up. Called doggy daycare. Yeah, I don't know what they call them over in the States. So doggy daycare in New Zealand is a prevalent term. Yeah.
When you were looking for house sit opportunities, where do you turn to? Do you have things that you look for that are red flags that immediately turn you off for something?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at advertisements, so we use a website called Kiwi House Sitters over here. We know that trusted house sitters, for example, is quite often used in the US and internationally, but we find Kiwi House Sitters is the website where we find most of our house sits here in New Zealand. So when there is an advertisement, we look at the photos, we look at the advertisement itself in terms of what does it say about the animal, how many animals are there, can we realistically manage that? Even if one of us, say, got sick, which we had recently, where Paul had to look after the animals for a period of time himself. And those kind of things. Is it actually something that we would be enjoy doing? Is it in a region that we have, say, either haven't been to and would like to explore? Or is it somewhere where we happen to have other commitments and I just would work nicely to have that be at location and say safe on accommodation costs? So all those aspects kind of play into us selecting a house sit. And as I said, we have to be fairly quick. We then apply and kind of underpin or point out kind of why we would be a good fit for that house sit. In terms of red flags, we had some not so great experiences, like a flea-infested house, for example. But we've learned from that in the sense that we now either meet the people in person, buy the house, meet the homeowners, meet the animals beforehand, or do that via a video call. We didn't do this in the case of the flea-infested house. We just had a phone call, and it was our mistake. But yeah, you live and learn. You have those experiences, and we always question ourselves afterwards. Okay, how could we have prevented that experience? Does that mean for future houses? Kind of what questions do we need to ask, or how do we need to change our approach accordingly so that we don't have that experience again?
How do you do that review process? Because I feel like that's super important, not just when you finish a house sit, but I'm also thinking of when we're running businesses and we're taking on clients or a mishap happens. Like, how do you do that personal review and reflection on that experience and turn it into something that is going to benefit you moving forward?
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing for us is, and again, this comes back to our values approach, is the honesty component. It's sometimes very hard to be upfront and honest with your clients and talking to them about their badly behaving animal or their house that doesn't suit or is not equipped enough for the animal, or the yard that isn't fenced off, but they still expect the animal to be able to go outside to do its business. So, we look at it initially from the animal's point of view in terms of, can we keep that animal happy? And if we can't, if we've got to do things that are beyond our experience, beyond our control, we would certainly point it out to the homeowner, because it's not just a review for the homeowner to let them know of how they can do things better, but it's for the next house sitter or pet sitter in the future. We're letting them know what they can look forward to, and we would want the same thing, because we look at reviews quite intently when we're choosing a house sit. So it works both ways, forward and back.
Yeah, and also we have every now and then we have people approach us, homeowners approaching us. They're going away for conference and they want us to look after a dog, for example. We had recently. We met the the homeowner. We met the pet. I took her for a walk. It was a dog. But we felt that their approach or their idea of us looking after the dog for that conference period would have not been in the best interest of the dog. The dog had anxiety issues and whatnot. And so we basically pointed that out and declined, politely declined, and told them, we don't think what you are planning to do with us looking after the dog is the right thing to do for the dog because of X, Y, Z. And we'd be happy to look after the dog at some stage, but not under these circumstances. So we try to be, as upfront and honest with people. Some people don't like that. And don't talk to us afterwards anymore, but it is also fine. We don't want to do something, firstly, that doesn't sit right with us, that makes us, coming back to that stomach feeling, that makes us feel uncomfortable, but is also not right for the animal and the animal's welfare.
And when you're caring for somebody's home and for their furry family member, you never want to have to be apologizing on the back end. You always want to be honest and saying no up front, right? Say that honest no. instead of having to apologize later because it was over your head, or because things did get out of hand, or because these things came up.
Yeah, it was interesting. We had a situation a few months back where we had to look after 8 dogs. They were working dogs on a farm, and the owner had given us an instructions verbally when we were doing the handover. Luckily, I'd actually recorded it. I'd taken a video of him telling me which dog ate which food at which time, and so the dogs had a variety of dietary requirements, and had a puppy to look after as well. And it was in that sort of situation, even at a review point of view, when we're communicating with them 24 hours later or 48 hours later, reconfirming the instructions that we're given, because at that point in time, I didn't feel comfortable that I understood exactly what he meant. He'd left one of the dogs off in terms of his regime, so I didn't know what food to give him. And so it was that whole thing of like, it's clarification and making sure I understand those instructions really well, so that I'm doing what they want. And even though they may have thought that they'd given me the instructions correctly, it's that whole thing of reconfirming the position, because the last thing I want is that dog to get the wrong dog food
and then getting sick,
or not getting any dog food at all because I left him off.
Outlining expectations and clarifying if you have any questions. Again, like just being upfront, like I didn't quite catch that. Could you go over it one more time? Because you're right. When homeowners and when pet owners are going through their process, their methodology, it is literally second nature to them, and they barely think about it. Right? I don't know how many times this has happened to you when you say, how much do they eat? And they give you this blank stare, like, well, they just eat how much they eat, right? I don't understand the question even. And you're like, okay, I need you to draw a line on a cup. or they say, oh, or I've loved this where they say he gets a cup. And you're like, is that a measuring cup? Is that a drinking cup? And many times it's, oh, well, we got this one cup from this restaurant in 1992, and that's just what we feed our dogs with, right? And you're just like, I have...
Yeah.
And it's in the drawer with all the other cups.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no harm in double checking with the client, because our goal is to give them peace of mind, make sure their pets are well cared for, and everything runs smoothly and without error and issues. At the end of the day, right? That's what we want.
Yeah, it's not bad intent on their side. Oftentimes they are kind of on the way to doing a holiday, and they need to pack and kind of think of thousands of other things and forget then about the animals and providing detailed instructions for those.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. It's that the owner goes away and we're looking after their house, and when we come back, our relationship is with the animal. And so therefore the homeowner is an hour beforehand and an hour afterwards, and that's it. So our relationship, that connection that we have is never with the homeowner. It's always with the animal. And so therefore it's that.
They can't tell the owners, yes, they've been great or not.
Yeah.
Only like if they're still happy wagging their tail or that is kind of an indication that they've been treated well and looked after well. So
yeah, although we found that a lot of the time with when we've done the dog walking or the dog running, the dogs are a lot fitter at the end of their time with us. And the homeowners have always commented on this. It's like, they say to us, can you please take the dog twice a day for 5 kilometers? And it's like, you can tell after the first day that the homeowner never, ever takes their dog twice a day for 5 kilometers. It's just so funny. So when we do it, because that's what
get the 5 kilometers
they get the 5. So the dog is so fit at the end of that time.
Yeah. You're right. It is outlining those expectations, and it is so interesting to hear that kind of like it's what they say versus what's actually happening. And sometimes you're right. And then, again, if they just ask questions to clarify that, because what you don't want to have is at the end of it them be frustrated with something that happened that you didn't clarify. Are you a member of Pet Sitters International? PSI is the largest educational association for professional pet sitters and dog walkers, with a mission to promote pet sitting excellence through education. After the tumultuous past year, having the support of a strong community and direct access to educational resources and business tools is more important than ever as we rebuild our businesses. PSI is here to help. With a free monthly member toolkit, monthly bonus resources, online trainings, private member Facebook group, and more, along with group rates on insurance and background checks, PSI's one-stop shop for everything you need for your pet sitting or dog walking business. As an educational association, PSI believes that if you know better, you'll do better, and invites you to join thousands of other like-minded professionals who are committed to offering the best possible pet care services and elevating our industry. If this sounds like you, visit petsit.com/PSC to learn more. Our listeners can save $15 off your first year membership by using promo code PSC15 at checkout. Do you get feedback from homeowners about their satisfaction with your service and what they liked or didn't?
I guess the first part is during the stay itself, during the home sit, is our communication process is quite strict. It's 24 hours after we are there with the animals, we will always give them an update, the homeowner, via text or messenger, or we'll send a photo of us with the animal. Just know that after 24 hours they're still alive. Yeah. And then we sort of spread it out depending on how long we're there for. So that communication through the text is quite important, and talking about the good things and the bad things in terms of the animals being good or behaving well or settled in nicely. So our communication to them, theirs to us is obviously, we're on holiday, the sun's shining, and we're sitting on the beach with a pina colada, and it's great. Thank you very much. Don't disturb us again.
We always ask how much information they actually want and kind of make it.
Because, they're on holiday. We don't necessarily want to bamboozle them with their animals.
Stuff happening at home, kind of.
That's not important.
Yeah, only if they want to. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's a matter of making sure that afterwards, from the review point of view, you got the information right. So it's just good communication. And part of that starts right from the beginning of the interview. How did you get on with the homeowners? Do they like our philosophy of things? And so therefore we can sort of see what they're like as homeowners as well, if there's some sort of synergy there.
Yeah, and we get obviously reviews after, so always try to get reviews from them, written reviews that are either on the house sitting website to share, or on our own website, so that we can use it as references for future houses.
Have you ever received a negative review? And if so, how did you process that and deal with that kind of feedback?
No.
We haven't. But good question. I don't know. I mean, I think probably if we were to get a negative review, we would think about, what does that mean? And maybe if it's something we disagree with or don't understand, to get a better understanding and ask them, how could we have done it better than, not necessarily in a forwards and backwards in writing, but maybe even giving them a call and say, okay, you were not satisfied with this, or this was a problem. Yeah. How can we improve that going forward?
Colin, to be honest, we've only ever had 5-star reviews. Yeah. We've never had anything less than that. So we don't know what it's like to get a negative review and to have to deal with that. But I think we would know in our own heart if we didn't feel, if we weren't doing the right thing, or if something had happened, an incident had happened perhaps. We've never, we have had, I was going to say we've never had an animal die on us. Yes, we have had.
But it was an animal. It was an animal that was born on our watch as well.
Yeah. We were looking after sheep. So we had 18 sheep to look after in the middle of winter, and the baby lambs weren't meant to turn up until spring, but they did turn up. They did turn up, and so we had lambs being born on our shift.
And we tried to bottle feed one or supplementary feed, and it didn't make it through the night. So it was not. We tried our best.
So apart from that one little lamb who was a day old or 2 days old, we've never lost one on our shift.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Well, I think part of that too is credited to your process in screening the clients and screening the homeowners, right? Of being, again, we've talked about intentionality, being intentional of that, asking good questions, seeing if they are going to jive with your philosophy, and really working through that process, being very intentional through that entire thing, and not just being flippant about it, of going, I'll say yes and we'll figure it out on the back end. Like, we have these processes there are meant to make sure we're a good fit. It's meant to protect us. It's meant to protect the homeowner, and they're there for a reason. And I feel many people can get frustrated with having processes in place, like, it's too structured, or there are too many steps. Steps are good. Steps are good, not just for your client or for the homeowner that you bring on, but they're good for you, so that you don't get ahead of yourself, or you don't start saying yes to things that you shouldn't be saying yes to.
Yeah, we found in the beginning with our lack of experience, we put too many processes in place, and it was quite interesting. I think we had a 3-step written process for them to fill out, and in the end, we condensed it down into the one document, which is the questionnaire application form. And we use that as our handover document as well. And we find that with that handover document, there are questions that are raised in there through our experience. So we've had to put the question in there to ask, to find out this information.
Yeah.
But we've also found that in providing them with this structured questionnaire, they have a greater degree of confidence in us knowing what we're doing because of this structured process that we have in place, all these questions that we ask that other house sitters hadn't asked them in the past.
It does kind of help sell yourself to them when they're looking for, oh, wow, these people are taking this very seriously. This is very meaningful for them. I can trust these people, or I can learn more about them. It does. It's part of this, communicating or this marketing that you're doing. It's not just in the bio that you have or the photos that you have posted or your website. It's in the processes. It's all part of that experience that they're having. You're selling them throughout that entire time about, to pick you over somebody else.
And it's also about, we taking on a responsibility, and we take that responsibility very serious. And by having those processes in place and asking those questions, we signal that seriousness about, taking on that responsibility.
And the importance of their pet.
Exactly.
Now, I know you have these processes in place, but things do happen. You've already mentioned a few of them. So what are some of the house sits that didn't quite go according to plan?
Well, I suppose with COVID, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Recently, at the end of a 1 month sit, 2 days before the end, we went into lockdown again. So we'd had a lot of freedom in New Zealand and the ability to move around. But just before the end of one sit and 5 days before the next, the country had a spike in community cases. And so the area that we were in had to go into lockdown the next morning at 6 a.m. So this was a situation where we're 2 days before we finished one, we're 5 days before the next one, and the next one was 6 hours drive away. So we had to very quickly ask our current homeowner, can we leave the property now to be able to escape? And at 2 o'clock in the morning, we drove for hours to get out of the region that we're in where the lockdown was happening, to be able to get out of this region, just be able to get down to the next homeowner because they were a little bit panicky. They booked their trip, they made all the plans, etc., and they were like, "Oh no, our house sitter isn't going to be able to get through to us." So we had to work with both homeowners at I think it was
10 o'clock at night.
10 o'clock at night, saying, "Well, we've been told the lockdown's at 6 a.m. the next morning. What do we do about it?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and in this instance as well, it was actually the homeowners of the house that we had done that contacted us immediately when it was announced on TV, the restrictions. Because they had actually asked us if we were okay to extend our stay by 2 days. We would have finished the following morning anyway. So, but we said, we stay 2 days longer, but we couldn't now do that anymore. So they said, don't worry about it. We get a neighbor to look after those animals. You go out, you make sure that you can make your other commitments, and we worked it out from there. So it comes down to communication, and we had a good communication level and good connection with the owners at the house where we were at.
It was just a tough drive at 2 o'clock in the morning to drive for hours to try and escape
We felt like
the lockdown.
Criminals. Yeah. We felt like criminals trying to get out of, because they would put,
barricades in place,
roadblocks in place to that people get out of Auckland.
Yeah, it's not like in the States where you can walk across your state boundaries quite nicely. In New Zealand, we have similar sort of areas or regions, but this is probably the first time they'd actually put roadblocks in place, stopping people from leaving the area if you weren't going home to your house. And we're nomadic. We don't have a house. We don't have an address to be able to say we're going to the next place.
Yeah.
We don't have anything like that.
Yeah.
So that was certainly an interesting situation for us.
Last year we had, with COVID as well, we had a house sit where people took a cruise ship trip around New Zealand and then across to Australia. And it was like literally in the midst of all the lockdowns starting to happen. And all the border restrictions to kick in. And after a week of their trip, they decided at their last stop in New Zealand, no, we're not going to head to Australia because then we have to go into quarantine over there. We stop our trip now. And then suddenly in the morning, they told us, no, we're turning up this afternoon. They did offer us to stay longer, but the house was too small for us to sit it out the other week that we hadn't been able to do. And so we were without accommodation suddenly within hours and had to find, okay, what are we doing now? We need to book a flight back to Auckland and things like that. So those kind of things do happen, but we just take them on our chin and then figure out how do we solve that.
I guess from that point of view, we're quite lucky in the fact that we can be flexible. We've only got backpacks, so the ability to move from place to place is quite easy for us to do so. And how we deal with accommodation in an emergency, we've got down pat as well. Again, another process.
Well, so has the last year changed how you approach house sits or how you plan for them and the accommodations at all?
Firstly, as we said before, they are shorter, so we have to, coordinate more or plan more because we have more little bits and bobs to sort out rather than one long sit. Although, having said that, we are actually going to start a 4-month house sit next week, which is a repeat sit. We have looked after the cat before.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, that has changed. We had a period where we didn't have any house sits, as Paul mentioned. So that's for us was then reverting back to Airbnbs where we stay, or short-term rentals where we stay in between house sits. What else has changed over the last year? That's pretty much it.
We're very fortunate in New Zealand in terms of we have very low cases. We've had 23 deaths in total in 26 in New Zealand. So we've kept COVID in control, and so therefore our freedoms that we have in the country are very much appreciated, and we're able to move around. There are times when we have had lockdowns, and they've been very serious and very, very short, sharp, hard lockdowns. But as a country, we've adhered to them and benefited from it.
Now, if somebody's listening to this and they are maybe interested in the world of travel house sitting and what that looks like for them, what would be your biggest piece of advice for somebody looking to get involved and get started?
I think for us, it's like start small, and if you can house sit or if you can look after your friends' animals or your relatives' animals, getting some references, whether it be from a neighbour or a community member or from our point of view, we had our real estate agent at the time give us a review. So if you don't have reviews, the very first time that you're trying to do a house sit, get reviews from reputable people that talk about your character as opposed to the experience that you have with pets. And having those available, as well as maybe the police check as well, at least gets you started, at least gives you that confidence that people vouch for you, that gives you some sort of credibility, because otherwise what credibility do you have when you first start off in that business or in that particular house sitting when you have zero experience at all?
Yeah, it's also, we spoke about it earlier. Think about your why. Why do you want to house sit? Why is that something that you'd like to explore? And really think about it. Is that something that is the right thing for you to do? If it's about, saving money, there are other opportunities out there. Is it, that shouldn't be kind of, I guess, the main driver, but it's really giving some thought to that. And also, as Paul said, when you start without having any reviews or references, think outside the box, as you mentioned, so get people to talk about your character, look at experiences that homeowners might appreciate. Have you volunteered in your community? You could give it a go if you don't know how house sitting, for example, is. Volunteer in your animal shelter, things like that. So get small experiences beforehand, and then have a think about the why. And also kind of when you put yourself into the homeowner's shoes, what are the things that you can tell them about you that makes them say, yes, would be a good person to look after my animals, because after all, you're a complete stranger to them, and then trusting you with their most precious, their animals and their property to look after.
Yeah, and it can feel a little daunting to try and communicate all of that in a website and a profile. So what are some things that homeowners are looking for, or keywords that people should make sure that they have in reviews or that they point out specifically on their profiles?
Yeah, that's a good one. The photos, obviously, and it's a little bit like dating. It's a little bit like your LinkedIn profile or your Facebook profile. Making sure that the single photo that's there is appropriate. It's not you at a party with lots of alcohol around the place, or it's not you doing things inappropriately. It's the two of you as you would want to be when you're talking to the homeowner. particularly the fact that if you're going from a stage of having a photo and then having an interview, you want to make sure that they're sort of aligned between the two. So the photo is unfortunately one of the things that as you scroll through and look at house sitting profiles, you see the people as they are.
And also, a smile goes a long way. People seeing you as a happy person rather than, at your saddest. That'd be good from a photo perspective. In terms of keywords, I don't think it's really about keywords. It's about talking about why you want to house it in your profile. And as I mentioned, talk about your experiences as you build them over time. When we started out, obviously we only looked after friends and families, animals, but we were house owners, we were homeowners, we had animals in the past. So we talked about that, that we did have animals in the past, and why we don't have animals now, and why we house it, to have the animal fix, as I mentioned earlier. So basically, try to represent yourself in your profile as good as you can, answering kind of those questions, and then as I said, don't worry about keywords because it doesn't need to fit into a Google search engine. It just needs to speak to the homeowner that looks at it.
Certainly, that's the case if it's on a platform. If you're talking about it, your own website, different story. SEO kicks in and
but we
keywords.
haven't explored that.
Yeah, I mean we have our house sitting page on our website, but it's certainly not the place that people go to for when they're trying to find us. That's for sure.
Paul and Sandra, I am very appreciative and so thankful for you taking us on your minimalist journey and encouraging us to be more intentional in our lifestyle and sharing some of your house sitting stories and then what you've learned from them, right? And how to keep moving forward and always be looking for something to better yourself and to better the world around us. So I know there's so much more to cover here and you both do a whole lot. So how can people get connected with you and follow along with your work?
Sure, Colin. And thank you. Thank you for the invitation to be able to talk to you today. So the way that people can contact us is generally through our website. So it's minimalistjourneys.com or through social media, and that's Min Journeys, or you can look up Minimalist Journeys on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter.
Perfect. And I'll have links to all those in the show notes so people can get connected to you right there. So again, this has been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure actually talking to you too.
There's a phrase that Paul said early in the interview of actions follow values, values follow your why. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about this since I recorded this with Paul and Sandra. In business, we talk all the time about understanding your why. Why are you in business? Why are you passionate about this? Why do you do what you do? This simple way of thinking about it is exactly why we say that all the time, because our why influences our values and how we perceive the world, what we hold dear, what we find important. And that was the key to the point of the conversation of minimalism. Minimalism strips away all of the distractions and boils down to the essentials of what we actually want in life and what we are willing to put on the line and what we want. Then when we take those values, we have actions that flow from them to protect those values. We live out our values through the actions in our business and in our personal life. And it's all linked back up to the why. So whether you're going to go fully nomadic and live out of your backpack and travel the globe, or offer the best possible pet care service that anyone has ever seen, it all starts with your why. And I hope that you're able to find that. And if you want to share what your why is and how it's linked to what you do in your business, send us an email at feedback@petsitterconfessional.com, or better yet, share it out with your clients this week in a video explaining who you are and why it is that you do what you do. We'd love to see those, so tag us too. We want to thank our sponsors, Time to Pet and Pet Sitters International, for making today's show possible. But really, we really want to thank you so much for listening. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll be back again soon.